When the Auditor General, John Mwanga, submitted his report to Parliament for the last financial year, 2020-2021, an audit query of some 10.6 billion shillings may have appeared like a footnote buried in a voluminous accountability audit.
And as Parliament, we are willing to support you once you request.
It is until the Parliamentary Committee on Commissions, Statutory Authorities and State Enterprises (COSASE) placed these under the microscope that the plot unravelled a syndicated corruption involving questionable claims which had been carefully crafted behind the cloistered boardrooms and dubiously smuggled into the supplementary budget.
Because some people are taking us like we're not serious.
This kind of malfeasance has become the hallmark of sly civil servants and crafty lawyers to steal billions of shillings and feather their own nests. The scheme is further worsened, the Auditor General John Mwanga has observed in previous audits, by the absence of a clear and proper procedure and policy for the effective settlement of decisions and orders entered against the government. How it works is simple. Debtors owed money by government, working with civil servants, lawyers and judicial officers, secure court orders attaching a bank account of a select institution until they are paid. Yet, in most cases, there are inordinate delays towards genuine claimants to frustrate them until they are coerced to forego part of the money. In the 10.6 billion shillings compensation case, it has emerged that the procedure for requesting for the funds was flouted, a number of red flags were ignored, and some of the claimants were fictitious.
Yes, Honorable Chair, Natalia Namuli is alive and is existing at Nyakaso's village, Nsunga Parish, Nsunga Sub-County in Kagadi District. And upon my interaction with her, she denied any knowledge of any compensation and denied being a relative to the family of late Atwane Kalete.
During the committee meeting on Thursday, it emerged that 79-year-old Natalia Namuli, in whose names 2.3 billion shillings was paid, was only a conduit in the graft who did not receive a penny of the amount purportedly doled out to her.
This lady was a client of your law firm, and we understand money that was meant for her was paid to your law firm.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So did this money, did all of the money come to your law firm meant for Madam Natalia Namuli?
Yes, I'm informed by my colleague that the money came through.
The committee heard that two lawyers forged powers of attorney over the late Antoine Kaleta's estate and falsely claimed that Namuli was a beneficiary.
My colleague who had been handling the file asked me to sign in order to pay the client, which I did. I signed, and then he went ahead and paid the client. I wasn't physically there to acknowledge the payment.
You who signed the check, checks actually totaling over 2 billion shillings to go to this claimant, this lady Natalia Namuli, you don't seem bothered, that there's a problem with that I signed money to be paid to somebody, but the person is saying, I don't know the law firm, I've never received any money.
I can confirm to you that yes, it is bothering, and I would love the committee to investigate the matter further and come to the conclusion.
The lawyers, according to documents tendered to the committee, faked the signature of retired High Court Judge Ralph Ochan on the letter granting Namuli powers of attorney on behalf of the Atwane Kaleta estate in Chamukama village, Kagadi district, to be able to receive compensation. Justice Ochan purportedly signed the letter on March 18, 2015. Justice Ochan, however, wrote to the committee on June 21st, indicating that his signature was forged. Justice Ochan's letter reads in part, and I quote, "In the year 2015, I was serving as chairperson of the Public Service Commission, having been appointed to that office on May 7th, 2014. Namuli, an old woman, was transported from the village and brought to the city by one of her relatives and booked into a nice hotel. Being illiterate, she was told to append her thumbprints to documents she barely understood. Since the committee kicked off a probe in earnest into the matter last month, senior government officials, one after another, have been shifting blame onto one another and offering apologies, which smacks of the inept and cavalier conduct of senior government officials towards official duty.
We were supposed to sit as a committee to map out the way forward as far as this 10.6 billion is concerned. And the secretary, before we start the meeting, she said, but I paid yesterday. And that was a Monday. And we asked, where did you get the authority to pay without the consent of the commission? And she did point out whatever the law, what have you. And then we as a commission resolved that I communicate to the PSST our dissatisfaction and disassociating ourselves from that pay.
You have to refer to the investigations of the Committee of Parliament, because if you look at their report on page 9, the committee actually went and talked to Namuli herself and found her to be a very old lady. And on page 10 of the report, they recommended that the claimant is of advanced age and is living with her sick mother and bedridden, and the committee recommends that the outstanding balance of 1.5 be paid.
I did do my own research, and then I said that Natalia Namuli was non-existent. It wasn't there, and that was 1.something billion.
I don't know whether many of you have observed this. This tendency of people wanting to become rich overnight is a very dangerous trend. Now I'm speaking as a patriot. So I'm happy that you have even opened up now my eyes here, really. Hitherto, you see the problem in me, I trust people. I trust people. I believe people should be doing what they are supposed to do.
But how did it all begin? It started with a November 30th, 2020 letter by then Lands Minister Betty Kamya to her finance colleague Matiaka Saija to provide money to Uganda Land Commission to pay 6 claimants. She wrote, and I quote, I have been directed by His Excellency the President to expeditiously settle compensation for some land acquired by government to ease tension between landowners and squatters. Other claims for compensation arise out of court orders, while others are very sick, long-time claimants who need to meet their medical expenses to acquire land elsewhere. Natalia is claimant number 4, according to the letter, entitled to 1.6 billion shillings, needed the money urgently for medical attention. Kamya wrote, your prompt attention will be much appreciated. Procedurally, according to Section 25 of the Public Finance Management Act, the Finance Minister considers a supplementary vote upon a request by the accounting officer of any ministry, agency, and department. In this case, the request ought to have been generated by the accounting officer of Uganda Land Commission, the statutory body that holds in trust and manages any land owned by the government. Kamya told NTV that her letter was not in any way binding.
It is not. But when the Minister of Finance finds merit in a communication like that one, for instance, like a presidential directive and like a court order, the Minister of Finance does not on his own volition authorize payment, but he takes that request to Parliament. And it is Parliament which appropriates the funds. You see what I'm saying? At the end of the day, it is Parliament. And I don't know why the Minister of Finance were fidgeting. All they had to say was that for us, we implement appropriations by Parliament.
She said her decision was in good faith to clear compensation backlog.
And when the Minister of Finance took this request to Parliament, the Speaker even set up an ad hoc committee to investigate it, a committee of Parliament. And the committee of Parliament took 2 months to investigate this matter, and arising out of the findings of the committee of Parliament, Parliament appropriated those funds, and the Ministry of Finance sent them to Uganda Land Commission.
The money in question was approved by technocrats at the Finance Ministry and tabled in February 2021 as part of the supplementary budget of 292 billion shillings sought by the executive. On February 9th, 2021, when the 292 billion shilling supplementary budget was meant to be passed, there was acrimony on the floor of Parliament after a section of MPs rejected the vote to the Uganda Land Commission. During the debate, the former Mukono South MP, Johnson Muyanja Senyonga, who lost in the last polls, red-flagged the appropriation to the Uganda Land Commission, citing a letter by the now embattled body's chairperson, Beatrice Biencha. In the letter addressed to the then Speaker, Rebecca Kadaga, and which was read out on the floor, Biencha disowned the list of claimants. This compelled Kadaga to direct the Budget Committee to further probe the matter. During the committee's hearings to harmonize the matter, Biencha and Kamia, who was accompanied by her then deputy, Persis Namuganza, clashed before MPs.
Apologize to the committee on behalf of our sector for washing our dirty linen in public, because that's what it looked like.
It comes through the commission, and we agree because we are handling domestic arrears. Having the names tagged the way they were, 6 of them, without the knowledge of the commission was irregular on our part.
When the minister lastly says that the money urgently needed is this, but to my wisdom, it should not be managed by the ministry directly. It goes under Uganda Land Commission, where she controls. Why would somebody say, maybe later she would come, this is now would be administrative, and say, Minister, even if we want to pay all this person 6 billion, but given this person also who is bad love, can we balance and give him forward? That is now administrative. A hiccup to show as if there is something or someone who is trying to steal money.
So our question is, who made the request and for what? Excuse me. So it means there is some element of forgery going on. Okay.
The Kachumbala County MP, Patrick Isangi, the then vice chairperson of the committee, after failing to secure a consensus during a February 10, 2021 meeting, dismissed both parties and indicated that the MPs would make their recommendations to the House. Consequently, the 292 billion shilling supplementary budget was passed on February 12, 2021, and made its flack by some MPs like Cecilia Ogwal, owing to disagreements between Uganda Land Commission and its parent ministry. 15 months later, it now clearly appears like a dubious scheme which was red-flagged could have been nipped in the bud had authorities listened to the voice of reason.
There are very strong checkpoints. So payment cannot be done on the strength of a letter from a minister. That's why I just fail to understand why it is such a big thing, except that COSASE is not guiding this and spending taxpayers' money really. A whole month of taxpayers' money on a sitting to discuss a letter.
There is a procedure according to the Public Finance Management Act on how supplementaries are requested and initiated. It is supposed to be by the accounting officer. In this case, should have been the secretary to the commission. That was not done. The Honorable Betty Kamia bypassed that. As Lands Minister, she wrote herself to the Minister of Finance. Of course, for her, she says, no, it was not a supplementary, it was a request for funds. Okay, give it whatever name you want to give it. Ultimately, for as long as you're not submitting your annual budget, you're requesting for a supplementary.
Keith Mwakanezi, the former Finance Ministry Permanent Secretary, told the committee on June 14th that he was away on sick leave and payment should not have been approved. His deputy then, Patrick Ochailap, who signed off the money, also admitted to the flaws. So, what criteria did the Parliamentary Budget Committee rely on to approve this request, even after glaring concerns were raised? Nakawa West MP and Kosase chairperson told NTV the writing was on the wall all along.
There were lots of misses along the way. You know, right beginning with finance, which should have done due diligence to say, okay, we should not take this request if it's not coming from the right office. Number two, where is the presidential directive? So mix that up. And, you know, when a request from finance to parliament comes, many times, you know, parliament says, okay, in this case, he said, let's put in place an ad hoc committee. I don't want to speak for the ad hoc committee. It doesn't exist anyway. It was disbanded after it did the work. But I don't know what challenges they had, you know, whether it was adequate, they didn't have adequate time or what. I don't want to speak for them. But for us, we have been able to gather this evidence. And it's in a very short period of time. You know, we have gone on ground, realized the lady whom they say received money doesn't have any idea. You know, we have reached out to the judge whom they say signed the letter. The judge is saying that's a forgery, hold those people responsible.
Senyonyi says this was a carefully calibrated scheme.
It's not only the Honorable Betty Kamya that should be answerable. She is number one on the list of those who should be answerable because she is the one who wrote the first letter asking for money. And then the entire cartel, including these lawyers, including officials from Uganda Land Commission and the Ministry of Lands. Because this syndicate can't just be one person, okay? So she's not the only one to be answerable, but she started the process, she's the genesis. And if she says that, yes, her letter was not binding, yeah, but you see, ultimately, action was taken, money was released based on her letters.
I think that Kosase is brewing a storm in a teacup and building a mountain out of a molehill. If I erred as minister to write this letter, what about all these checkpoints?
The Honorable Betty Kamya, who I have nothing personal against, because these are records. I mean, her own colleague, Minister Matia Kasaija, denied her, said, one, of course, we didn't follow procedure. Two, I've never seen that presidential directive. And other officials, they've all, you know, implicated her to say she talks about a presidential directive, but she didn't give it to us. In fact, they also say, so we were actually wrong to act. We shouldn't have believed her. We should have first looked at it. So ultimately, that's the problem. If procedure had not been followed, but then the right thing gets to be done, that the genuine claimants get to receive their pay, then it would have been a slap on the wrist to tell Honorable Betty Kamya, you know what, next time, follow procedure. But then it turns out that there are forgeries.
Both Kamya and Bianca appeared before the committee on May 25th when the erstwhile disdainful working relationship was exhibited.
Did you do due diligence to be sure these people deserve payment, that there are no ghost claimants? Because there's been concerns, and now even referring to the report of the ad hoc committee, they raise concern about some of the beneficiaries.
Honorable members of the committee, I wish to reiterate the stance of Uganda Land Commission. We didn't initiate the 10.6 billion as supplementary budget, and I did write to the Speaker then, distancing ourselves from that supplementary budget.
The 6 other ones who had appealed, some through the President, others through court and then to me, and those are the ones I knew. And those were their claims. And we asked Uganda Land Commission whether their claims were genuine, and Uganda Land Commission said they were, but that was even after I'd written this letter.
Kamya told the committee that all along she worked with the Uganda Land Commission accounting officer Barbara Imario, on the matter.
I want to talk to Barbara only. It is whoever is in office.
Now, the Auditor General, in his report, says the accounting officer, and this was after the exit meeting, the accounting officer explained that the Commission did not initiate any request for the said supplementary. That seems to contradict what you're saying.
What I said is that when we got these petitions on our table, we did some due diligence to find out whether the petitions were valid or fine. That's how we communicated.
Both Imario and Bianca were suspended by President Museveni on March 16th to pave way for investigations into allegation of corruption and fictitious payments which caused losses to the government. Imario has since snapped summons to appear before the committee and her whereabouts are unknown. On June 8th, Senyonyi wrote to the UPDF Chief of Defense Forces seeking for information about Imario's whereabouts. The letter reads in part, "The committee has also been reliably informed that she had been under guard by military police until she left the country when the investigations commenced. This was confirmed by the records in the Department of Immigration." It's unclear if the CDF responded. Kamya, however, denies any wrongdoing.
If Uganda Land Commission didn't want to pay them, they would have said they're not on our schedule of people to pay. Please return the money. We always return money. The accounting officer. You can say they give us money here, for instance, to build a building, and you say the procurement process was not complete. Sorry, we have returned the money.
What's becoming clear now is that there is a syndicate, a very organized one, that has been using Uganda Land Commission to defraud the taxpayer. It's a very organized cartel. Uganda Land Commission, Ministry of Lands, and so on. So they forge all these, and then they say so and so is the one who has title. So then government pays them so that they don't chase these people off their land. So it is a money-making cartel.
The other claimants are the family of Mzee Syda Bbumba, who allegedly received 6.4 billion shillings, Stephen Peter Nagenda, who allegedly received 1 billion shillings, Julius Busulwa, who allegedly received 1.4 billion shillings, and Yasika Lwakana, who allegedly received 125 million shillings. The Syda Bbumba payment of 6.4 billion shillings, Kamya says, was a presidential directive through the president's principal private secretary. However, there is no letter from the presidency to that effect.
And I found that much as Rabukurukuru was a presidential directive, some of the land had been gotten, I think he had sold it off. There was some, so that was it. And Julius Busulwa had already been paid off completely. However, another title had been put into the file. There was only one person who was a legitimate claimant, and that was Stephen Nagenda.
Whether the president's principal private secretary should have put the request in writing also remains a contentious matter.
The Act does the communication of the PPS presidential what? Principal private secretary. Yes, communicating a directive. Do you act on it? If it is in writing, yes. It is he or she to if she didn't get a directive to respond to this. But for me, and I get even now, the Prime Minister and myself will get a lot of presidential directives communicated by the PPS. Now, do we act? Yes, we act, provided they are within the rules of Uganda.
Asked Honorable Betty Kamya, now that you're saying you acted on a presidential directive, produce it. And we gave her 3 days. 2 weeks later, there was nothing. Eventually, she brought some documents, but the presidential directive was not there. My thinking is the presidential directive is not there. She acted on a frolic of her own.
The important thing in all this is that the minister's letter is not binding on anybody to undertake any action. Not Minister of Finance, not Parliament, not Uganda Land Commission, because everybody knows what they're supposed to do.
While the subsequent committee hearings will shine light on the authenticity of the other funds doled out to claimants, at the end of it all, the committee recommendations will remain on paper and culprits may not be brought to book. If the government wants to combat the scourge of graft, it must set the toughest penalty for those who steal public funds. But this, we can only continue dreaming.